things very expensive in my eyes, his time. 24 hours given to every man, every woman. None of us have excuse. How you utilize your time, though, is going to tell us a lot about you. You've got to learn how to respect her and honor her, to give her her due, and she will reward you. The other is the journey. The journey is a powerful creator. It created the individual before us. And we really, truly all want to thank Kirk for coming, because these things are precious. And we want to take the time and honor him for it. Kirk, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Ken. I'm looking forward to being here and looking forward to our conversation.
Excellent. One of the questions that I asked people on the onset, and I've always asked this for a while now, how do you serve mankind? Because I'm trying to elevate the conversation as to the hearers, the ones that are listening to us, to let them know that it is much more than just themselves. Their journey will lead them to serve. How do you serve mankind?
I think with the work I do now, and I work a lot with people that struggle with mental health and substance use, and I've heard this quote a lot from a lot of different people is, we're most qualified to serve the people we used to be,
Yep.
and that's kind of who I serve now. I'm someone who's in long-term recovery from substance use and mental health, and now I work to help individuals facing similar challenges kind of navigate those things. So
That is incredible. I think it's an honorable profession, if you will. But as I said on the onset, man, I believe that we usually take our trauma and turn it into our superpower. So I always tell people, just don't panic yet. Take your time, get into your journey, seek help, and become that individual. One of our customs is to go back. We like to travel back in that time machine. It's called a memory, to revisit a couple of spaces that we reside for a few years, if you will. The first place is that family, strangers, mom and dad, however they've seen the world and perceive the world through their trauma. You have siblings, if you do. All of you strangers are there, and you're now going to deposit data into each other to help you grow and hopefully deposit some good stuff in you so that you can move through your life. What was your family like?
So I grew up, I had both parents. My parents were married, all the way up until a few years ago when my dad passed away. But I had an older sister who was 5 years older. So kind of an age gap when you're younger. When I was going into high school, she was going away to college. And so we were never really super close, I guess, growing up.
Yeah.
But I would say for the most part, I had a pretty good childhood. I played sports, had a lot of friends in the neighborhood. We were always outside. It was different back then. Everything we did was outside.
Yeah.
A bunch of boys in our neighborhood, so baseball, soccer, anything we could do outside, that's what we were doing. I guess kind of on the, just growing up in my family, I had a big extended family. I live in St. Louis, Missouri, and big Catholic family. So like a lot of family get-togethers on holidays and things like that. And it was always kind of a big party. Um, I didn't realize it when I was younger, but part of my story is growing up with a father who struggled with alcoholism, which really kind of shaped, I think, some of my core beliefs growing up. He was a hard worker, but really struggled with it, and it kind of progressed as time went on. And it, now in hindsight, I can see like, hey, maybe some of the behaviors, some of the behaviors I learned, and some of my worldview was kind of shaped during that time, and probably, was a blessing in disguise looking back, because it put me where I'm at today. It wasn't an easy journey, but everything I've kind of gone through that led me to where I'm at today. I can look back now and just be kind of grateful. It took a while to get there, but it wasn't easy, but it put me to where I'm at today. And so, overall, it was a good childhood. Just, having a parent that was an alcoholic was, a struggle. But our family, remain close. I went through my own struggles, which I'm sure we may get into, but
Yeah,
um, I'm still close with my sister and my mom now, and was close with my dad. We had our issues, but all
yeah,
the way
yeah.
up until his passing a few years ago. So.
Yeah, I had a similar situation. One of the things, Kirk, when I had my sons, and once I remember one day in particular, I got home from work, and being a dad with four boys, uh, I'm thinking about the bills, I'm thinking about whatever stuff like that, and I'm walking in my house with my head down and my hand behind my back, really just in my zone, if you will, not paying attention of what I was doing. And all of a sudden, I felt this energy in my presence. And I turned around and looked, and it was my youngest son, Joshua, with the same thing. He was doing exactly what
Mm-hmm.
I was doing with his hand in the back. He didn't see me when I turned around because he was mimicking me with his head down and his shoulder down. And I'm watching this guy, and it freaked me out. It made me realize that the kids are always watching. You don't, I didn't know until I saw them how many times I've done things and I didn't see them, but the kids are always watching. And here you were as a young man watching. You may not know, but you were picking up some data that he saw, he sensed energy and all these different things, and it began to permeate into his body, sit in there, and then later it manifests. And so I had to sit down and talk to my son Joshua to unhook him from what I saw was going on. So yeah, man. So here you
Yeah.
are. You were there. Go ahead. You were about to say something.
No, I was just gonna. You made a good point. It's you observe those behaviors, and it's you see my just like in the kind of the progression from generation to generation. Like
Yeah.
as I got older and kind of learned about things, it's like, oh well, you could see my grandfather had that issue, and then his dad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
goes
Yeah.
back and back until someone finally tries to step up and kind of change the trajectory of where the family's heading. You know.
Yeah. I believe that in every family, Kirk, there's an opportunity to dismantle the old belief, the old traumas. I think it's afforded, it comes, and an individual within that family have the opportunity to deal with what we call ancestral DNA curses and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's really a phenomenal thing. I've interviewed so many people, and everyone that have picked up the mantle to walk through their journey was that individual that had to decided in a way to deal with those ancestral things that were coming through in their lineage. And it's an honorable place to be, but it's also a beautiful, painful place. So here you are, this young man in the midst of all of that and recognizing a couple of things. What was your relationship with others outside of the family? This big family, I love the family gathering because I have a large family too. How was Kirk dealing with the people outside of his family?
Yeah. So again, this all kind of came later in life when I started to kind of unpack things. It's just, I think growing up, I had some really close friends,
Yeah.
um, really close friends. I mean, like we were like brothers, but I always felt, maybe that I just didn't quite fit in,
Mm-hmm.
and from the outside looking in, I did, but I guess there was always that feeling of like, hey, I'm hiding something or I'm not who I say I am. And I kind of looking back and understanding what that was. I mean, I think a lot of that had to do with, you know, a parent struggling with alcoholism because you kind of learn to hide things and you don't want to
Yeah.
get found out. And You don't want people to know like what's really going on. So a lot of those like insecurities, um, I had growing up, and I think a lot of people that struggle with substance use or alcohol, that's kind of a common thread you hear often is that,
Yeah.
they always felt like they didn't fit in. And for me, that was kind of my relationships outside there. Now I had a lot of friends and a lot of acquaintances, but I just always felt, like kind of out of place,
Yeah.
even though
Yeah.
I probably wasn't. But for me, it was most of my relationships were around sports. I played
Yeah.
competitive sports growing up. High school, I played competitive sports. So that was really my kind of my social circle. And then
Yeah.
as I kind of progressed to the later years in high school, sports kind of became a little less important. And then, some other, partying kind of became important. And, um, my priorities kind of changed. And that's kind of where I shifted into getting away from the things that, you know, kind of kept me on the straight and narrow and made me happy. And that's, where I started to transition and change my priorities to less healthy ones, I should say.
When you were in high school, and then most of us, when we call it, hanging with the boys and the outside influence, if you will, was that the area, the time? Because you said at the end of high school, if you can recollect, um,
Mhm.
uh, we were, young boys. We were just hanging, friends drinking. Was that how it started in your case?
So the drinking, just kind of experimenting started younger because, when I was younger, we would go like fishing, right? Or
Yeah,
we would go on these trips where we'd go to like Canada, right? We'd drive up there and do these trips where you're dropped off in the middle of nowhere for a
yeah.
week. And so it wasn't abnormal for us as like 12, 13-year olds to drink a beer,
Wow.
or, and the problem was for me is even, looking back then, one was never enough,
Yeah,
right? So it wasn't so much about enjoying or just having a beer. It was like, oh, this makes me feel different. And
yeah,
so I wanted more of that, and so someone that's probably got the genetic component of that, right? Like, so I quickly realized, well, if you name the substance or whatever, and it changes how I feel, usually for the better, at least short term,
yeah,
um, then more is going to make me feel even more better until it
yeah,
doesn't, right? So it was just kind of the progression of addiction or the disease, if you want to
yeah.
even call it that. But so that was started for me as family functions, fishing, hunting, whatever it may be, and sneaking beers with my cousins or,
Yeah,
that kind of stuff. And then over time, it progressed. And
escalated.
yeah, and I think, there's a lot of research now that shows, when the younger you start kind of experimenting, the more, even if you don't have the genetic component, but the more likely you are to develop unhealthy behaviors around whatever that
Yeah,
thing is, right? Uh, and so I was on the lower end of that spectrum of starting. So, and then add in the genetic component, I kind
yeah,
of had the perfect storm to, you know, go through what I went through.
yeah, yeah. So here you are, you're heading into college now, and
Hmm.
I'm reading your stuff, and I'm curious of how you did that. I know where you went. Now you're
Yeah.
thinking of heading into college, and what was your mindset? As you said, you were drinking and stuff like that, and hanging out with the boys and whatever. What made you pick the area of study that you went to? What was it that triggered you to say, "Yeah, that's where I want to go"? If you can recollect that particular event, if you will.
So for school, my sister had gone to that school. So, in my mind, I was like, oh, this will be great. It's out of state. I'll go there. As far as the area of study, I basically picked. I think things are different now than they were back then when people go to college. Back
Yeah.
when I went, it seemed like unless you're an engineer or a doctor or attorney, like a business degree was kind of just like a general, all-encompassing degree, and so that's what I went for. And there was no rhyme or reason to that. It was just I didn't know what I wanted to do, and that seemed
Yeah.
like a good, a good option, kind of just to set me up for success when I graduate. But in reality, that was a really tough time in the economy, and it didn't really, I struggled with a lot of things through college. But yeah, there was no rhyme or reason to it. It was more just, hey, this sounds good.
Yeah.
College is kind of the thing, maybe people think you should do, and so that's what I did.
Yeah.
In looking back, if I would have been one of those people that just benefited from, first of all, getting my act together before, taking on something like that's
Yeah.
requires a lot of time and effort and being serious, but probably starting somewhere more local and just kind of getting my feet wet, and then maybe eventually transferring to more of a 4-year school, which I did end up going to, but definitely no rhyme or reason. I was just trying to check the box and
Yeah.
make it look like everything was good from the outside looking in, and that was challenging because I went to a new state. I didn't know anyone that had
Mhm.
gone there. So for someone like me that always never really felt like they fit in, or I had to kind of overcompensate to fit in,
Yeah.
uh, it really that's when I would say things really progressed because you know it
Yeah.
was the thing to do, and there was access, and uh, yeah, that's what
Unfamiliar territory, all that type of stuff,
yeah.
yeah, and being the odd man out, if you will, and like you said, trying to fit in, all those things was create the perfect storm for you to just, continue. Mine was, I think, was first year of college. I made the dean's list, and then was second year I got in touch with a couple of boys, and you know how that goes,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, it was a challenge as well. So I know exactly how it is. Didn't know what the heck I wanted to do. I think most people are like that. You have very few people that know exactly what they wanted to do. More power to those
Right.
guys. So here you are, man. You
Yeah.
did the same thing just like everyone else, and like I said, we all went in there. When you started heading out, you're in college and you're looking further out, um, and you're looking at yourself within that space. Did you at any time, Kurt, begin to check in and start looking at yourself going, what am I doing, man?
Mm.
When you were in college, was there any time that you could remember when you were coming in and checking in, even if it was just a brief thing? We always come in and then it's 5 minutes later, your friend said, hey, there's a party over here, and you're gone, you know what I'm saying? So
Mm.
did you at any time check in to see, you know, what was going on internally?
I did, and I think I don't know where this came from for me, but I've always felt like I've been in touch kind of with my, I don't know, I guess I could call it kind of my spirituality.
Yeah.
I always felt different in that way. So I would check in usually after something bad happened, but
Yeah,
it
usually.
was like, hey, what am I doing?
Yeah.
But I always knew um, that I don't know. I always felt like I was put here for a reason, and
Yeah.
it took me a long time to really like start taking care of myself and things like that. But I always felt like that growing up. That's part of the reason I felt different. I just felt like, man, I'm here to do something. I don't know what that thing is. And I think that was a challenge for me. And then, yeah, there were a lot of times I did a lot of reflection and thought to myself, what am I doing? This
Yeah.
isn't sustainable. And the crazy thing was, and I don't want to just make this about addiction, but that's a big part of my story is, even when things were really bad, I mean, like, I was told, hey, you need to stop doing these things. You're going to die. I had some medical events that happened that were pretty scary, seizures and things like this. And even in those times, it just like wasn't enough. And,
Yeah.
looking back, it was like, maybe it wasn't just my time to figure it out yet. I needed to go through these other things. And it was funny. I don't want to go off topic, but I was with my sister and my mom and my sister's husband on Sunday, and we were just at a barbecue for Memorial Day. And we were talking about this exact same thing.
Yeah.
How it took, kind of reminiscing on some things and how it took some time. And, it's almost like I needed those things to happen in order to kind of plant the seeds to get me to where I need to be today as a father, as a husband,
Yeah.
all those things.
I think that all of it, I believe, Kirk, every single one of the things that we went through was necessary to prepare us for where we are today. Because if we didn't go through, it'd be some pieces missing, if you will. Because when we tap into the part of our quote unquote, as you said, you always knew you had something to do. And that's something I always tell people, that's our assignment, that we are feeling it pull on us. That unease is always sitting there in us that will cause us to eventually start navigating towards what's this thing here. And I think all of that stuff that happens to us takes time because it needs to be in us so that when we serve and we're looking in front of someone, we know exactly where they're at. Why? Because we've been there. We've been through all of that. That's why when someone that is in pain, struggling with mental health and alcohol and all the different things, sit down and becomes a part of Kirk's team. Kirk's team is going to be able to help you out because they've all been where you're at. And for a lack of a better word, you can't bullshit them because they've been there and they know when you are doing that. And so when you get in front of Kirk and his team, that's when the reality of things coming to you guys that, hey, this is real. These people know what they're talking about, and let's get this done. So here you are. Talk to us as to that day, Kirk, where, as they say, everything becomes like bolero, that crescendo, just boom, shows up in your life, and you now have to reevaluate what you're doing, how you're living. Talk to us as to one of those events that happened in your life, that the initial one, if you will, that really start you on the path to make that pivot to beginning to take care of yourself and all of those different things.
Yeah, it was a long process, and I will say, all those, like you said, can, you know, throughout my, young adult life, like things would work out for a little bit, and I'd be like, okay, I have these things figured out, but then it wouldn't, right? And
Yeah,
everything, like, like you were talking about, was kind of just pointing me in this other direction. Like, hey, yeah, you got this great job that you thought would, be a game changer for you, for your career or whatever, but it's not the right fit, So
yeah,
like all these things were like steering me in the other direction. But to answer your question, the I'll just go back to the most recent. I mean, for me, there's been a number of times where I've had to really do some self-reflection and make some changes, and I did. And they would last for a while, and then, I'd kind of fall off and think I had all these things beat. But, the biggest one for me was, I had gotten a job in a new field, and, in my mind, it was with a great company, and I was thinking, this is perfect. This is very hard to do. And granted, I'm
Yeah.
still struggling with, alcohol at this time, because alcohol has always kind of been the thing that
Yeah.
it was a constant. I had quit the drugs, over 13 years ago. But alcohol was kind of would always creep back in. I'd go a
Yeah.
year and say, oh, okay. But, long story short, I'd gotten a position with a company, and I was super excited, and, this was going to be great. And I was just miserable. It was nothing against the company or anything like that. It just wasn't the right fit, and I wasn't in a
Yeah.
good place mentally. And ultimately, I ended up, just leaving that company and really focusing on kind of my health
Yeah.
and wellness and figuring out what I wanted to do. And I had experience with recovery at that point, and I just got to the realization that, no one's going to come to my rescue,
Yeah.
and I could, I have a great wife, I have a supportive mom, and my dad was around at that time. And like, I have a good family, and my sister, uh, but I realized, like, hey, the onus was on me to
Yeah.
make these changes. And like, I couldn't count on a sponsor. They were helpful. That's part of my journey. But, ultimately I had to make the decision.
Yeah.
I had to do the hard work. And, once I made that decision and quit kind of having a pity party for myself, you know, um, that's when everything kind of changed for me, because I realized quickly, you know, that everything really was like a choice for me. I could choose if,
Hmm.
I want to wake up and go to the gym instead of
Yeah.
going to McDonald's and getting a whatever, right? Um, but with that said, I don't want the audience to think like, hey, I just woke up one day and that happened. There's
No,
10
man.
years of,
Yeah.
10 years of recovery and treatment centers and all these
Yeah.
things of trying to work towards that all kind of planted these seeds in my mind. And
Yeah.
I would get these tastes of, hey, I'd get 3 months completely sober or a year, and like my life would start to get better, and just my anxiety would go away, and I wouldn't be depressed, and all these things just improve. And then, it got to the point later in my life where I just finally, the sum of all those experiences kind of came together. And I was like, all right,
Yeah.
for me, the only path forward is abstinence. Like, I know that I can't dabble in
Yeah. Yeah.
drinking. It's all or nothing for me personally. I'm not saying that for everyone, and when I got to that point, it was very freeing. You know, I started getting in the gym every day, which I do
Yeah.
to this day. I mean, there were just changes I made that became my norm. And so like, when I operate outside of that norm, then I feel off. So like, if I'm not
Yeah.
doing the things that help me, if I'm not writing in my journal every night, like gratitude and, you know, saying my prayers and things like that, like, I know that I typically feel off when I'm not doing those things. And the weight that I used to carry, I call it, like the monkey on your back type thing.
Yeah.
This kind of secret life, and this secret
Yep.
that, once that was gone, and I mean, it's still there sometimes, right? Like,
Hmm.
life's not easy and perfect, but it's pretty easy now, because
Yeah.
that's my life. But, um, once that was gone, and I realized, man, there's really no limit to what I can achieve if I just don't do those things and continue
Yeah.
to do the things that work for me. And the
Yeah.
big thing for me is like, I know, me as a father, like I'm a better dad, I'm a
Yeah.
better
Yeah.
husband, I'm a better um, friend, better just advocate for people when I'm
Yeah.
my best self, and pretty empowering. And it's, you're almost, for me, it was almost like, man, I wish I would have just figured this out a long time ago,
Yeah.
but uh, it is what it
It
is. It's just meant
Yeah,
to
it
be.
takes time, man. It takes
Yeah.
time, Kirk, because nothing of quality happens instantaneously. We talk about the birth of a diamond. It takes a while. We talk about all these different things. It takes a while. Wine and all these different things. You have to. Um, you're gaining wisdom. I think you're gaining insights. You're gaining all of these things. It may not look like it because it's rough, but and I keep trying to educate those that are going on and about to enter their personal development. It is not easy. It is not quick. If you think it's quick, you're going to be beaten up all day long. And when Kirk was telling his story, he mentioned so many different powerful tools and processes that one must bring into their life in order to navigate through. And I've said this a million times. Everyone's life is circular until you make a decision that you don't want it to be circular. And that decision comes from that internal man, that subconscious guy that is in there. You, the creator, that has been sitting in there for so many years that you haven't given permission to come out and do his thing. And once you make that decision, like I said, synergy, it's amazing how things began to open up and began to create and come into your space. When Kirk made that decision, he began to incorporate a couple of other tools, boundaries. One of the most powerful things that you will ever use in your life is boundaries. He recognized that he had to have boundaries with his drinking. So he had to set up boundaries. I can't do this. I can't do that. Those boundaries saved his life. He knows he has to be absent. He can't be messing around, dabbling. Those are boundaries he's setting up. He has his journal. He began to incorporate exercising and all these different things. These are powerful tools to move you through from your dark place to your light. And he mentioned so many of them. And all of these things will help you as you begin to navigate and bring them into your space. They will begin to shift your perspective of how you see things, especially as Kirk said. He recognized that he had to take ownership. And once you do that, that's the beginning, because then you recognize that you can create by what thoughts you give permission to manifest in your life. He said, I can go to McDonald's, I can go here, I could do it. But you then pick which one you want to give permission to bear fruit. That's, guys, is creator that is living inside of you, has the capability of doing that. So, Kirk, you going through this, you begin to put all these things together. And I always tell people, we go through all those things because we have to take what we go through now, the trauma that we suffer, and then we begin to fine tune a process, if you will, by which we become even more powerful as individuals while we're here. How did you begin to put together, Kirk? How did it come into your mind? What was the conversation, and what was the genesis that helped you to create the peer network? What was it that sparked that you said, okay, this is where I needed to go?
Yeah. So I started the peer really. So I'll dive into my story a little bit. So when I was not happy working in the corporate world, I was trying to figure out, how do I work in the behavioral health space where I can go and work with individuals, but I wasn't ready to go back and get another master's degree,
Yeah.
because to get a clinical, to be a licensed professional counselor, or a licensed master social worker, you have to get a postgraduate degree, and I wasn't quite ready to do that. And a good friend of mine who's a clinical psychologist here, and he's in long-term recovery, and he's like, you should check out peer support. And I had not heard of it, and I had been in recovery for a little while, and I started looking into it, and I was like, all right, well, this is something I could do. And I decided to go back and get a master's in social work. So I was like, I could do this while could work full time, go to school full time, uh, be a parent, like all these
Yeah.
things. But I was sober. So like, it was
Yeah.
very, you don't realize how much time you have. But, I became a peer support specialist here in Missouri and worked for an agency here or organization here that's in multiple states. And I work a lot with drug court, DUI court, family court
Yeah.
clients. So people that are, either losing their children or they're going to go to prison if they don't complete this program for like multiple DUI offenses or drug offenses. So it's, most people don't want to be there. But so I was working there, and I realized, I had a large caseload of clients that I met with one-on-one, and I realized like how important it was for them to open up. And how much easier it was for them to open up when they knew that I was someone in recovery.
Yeah.
And so peer support's really based on peers are individuals who have lived experience with mental health or substance use, and they get trained and certified to provide support to people going through similar struggles. So I could relate to the clients, on a personal basis because we had that shared experience. Stories may have been a little different, but they understood I had walked the walk, and I'm not just reading out of a textbook on how to intervene with a client. And so I saw the value there, and the problem is that like peers they were really underpaid for the work they do. And so what happens is most leave the field, or kind of like myself, they go back and get a master's degree or finish their bachelor's degree and pursue other credentials, or just get out of the field altogether because it's hard work, and you're helping people that are, sick and they're struggling. And it's, if you're underpaid and you have a family, it's not sustainable work. So, I went the clinical route for a little bit and realized my passion is still in peer support. And so I wanted to create a place where peers could provide their services outside of traditional like residential programs or intensive outpatient programs. And we could, kind of eliminate all the barriers to getting access to those services. And we just do it through our platform on the peernetwork.com. It's just a telehealth platform that kind of connects you to peers on our team. It's just kind of low barrier entry to peer support. And I think, a lot of people don't know what peer support is. And so that's kind of our mission, is to educate people about what that is and how people, even if you don't struggle with, a lot of people don't need a higher level of care or support. When I say that, I mean like a residential program or something like that. They just want to talk to somebody who's understands what they're going through. And the difference, it should be someone that's trained in like boundaries and motivational interviewing and ethics. It doesn't necessarily have to be a clinician, right? Like sometimes people aren't ready for that, or they don't need that. And I think that's where peers that are qualified and have been doing it for a long time, they're an excellent resource and can bridge that gap. And it breaks down so many barriers for people.
Hey guys, all of you guys that are listening, I know many of you don't believe that there's someone you can talk to. I have someone that you can. We're going to provide everything for Kirk for you guys to have access to them. It doesn't matter, alcohol. It doesn't matter. Pain is pain. Pain is pain, guy. It doesn't, whatever stuff we use to mask pain, it doesn't matter. The peer network have folks in there that knows how to help talk with you and stuff like that, walk with you, hold your hands, so that you can understand some of those origins of where those pain is coming from, give you some insight, give you some additional data, if you will, that will help you to look at your situation a little slightly. And that little slightly, it may be all that you need to rescue you. Shifting your perspective from one to another is powerful, guys. And that happens when you engage with people that have insight and knowledge as to your location. Why? Because they've been there. And because they've been there, they know how to guide you and locate you basically by the questions that they ask. And asking those questions will give them information as to where you're at. And they'll be able to walk with you and move with you and help you to move through. So it doesn't matter what it is. And all of you that are listening, I don't care what type of pain you have. I have someone that has created a space by which you can touch base with him and his staff, and they'll be able to help you out and move you through. So don't worry about it. Just reach out, man, and don't worry about the stigma that is out there. These guys, I'm sure Kirk and his team, they're confidential pieces and stuff like that. They all have things that they honor themselves personally because they've been through it. They know what your resistance would be, and I'm sure they've put those benchmarks in place to protect you, protect your information, so that it's not all over the place. Talk to a little about that, Kirk, as to what you guys do there beyond just the drugs and stuff, as you mentioned.
Yeah, so anything mental health related or just, anxiety, depression, we work with anyone struggling with those things. As far as confidentiality, confidentiality, that's one of our core values. I mean, like that's number one for us. I mean, as far as just our platform, we do everything we can to remain compliant, HIPAA compliant, just like doctors, right? Like with data protection, all of those things. And we even work with a third party company to kind of ensure that does like audits and things like that. So that is from the get go when I started this, a couple of years ago, started building it. I mean, the number one priority we had was security and confidentiality, and peers are trained in that. We treat everything just like if you were going to see a doctor for a visit, is the same level of confidentiality we keep. And so if that's a concern, just know that our team goes through training for that. We're all well versed in that, and we understand, how hard it is to talk to someone about some of these issues, and we would never abuse that honor we have to kind of serve you and to listen to what you're going through. But as far as the clients we work with, I mean, peer support's not for everyone. I just want to kind of make this kind of disclaimer that sometimes, clinical intervention's needed, or meeting with a psychiatrist is needed or a doctor. But one of the great things about peers is like we understand that, and we know that a lot of times talking to a peer can be just what you need, right? Yeah. There's other times when it's not. And peers are excellent connectors. Like we're great at connecting people to resources. And what helps a lot of times, and this, if family members are listening to, that have a loved one struggling, is talking to a peer can kind of reduce some of the stigma, but also it kind of builds up some confidence in the client, to say, hey, I'm talking to this peer, and
Yeah.
we've worked through some of my goals, and maybe a goal now is, hey, maybe you should go see a doctor and get some blood work done and just like make sure everything's okay. Or maybe you should go just get an annual checkup because you haven't gone in 10 years. And so, like, those are the types of things that, you know, come out of peer support too, is
Hmm.
just improved kind of health outcomes, because people tend to start to work towards their goals that they set themselves. Um, and so they start to make these incremental progress, and they realize, hey, maybe I should start taking care of these other aspects of my life.
Yeah.
And like a lot of our peers, and you can see all their bios on our page. I mean, they all kind of do different things outside of peer support too, like around wellness, or like me, I'm a certified personal trainer. More just to kind of, for my knowledge and to communicate that with people when I work with them. But people on our team into yoga or meditation, or there's a lot of different things that they're passionate about outside of peer support. So they incorporate, some of those things if clients are interested.
Yeah, and those are all tools that we can utilize to assist ourselves, guys. So, Kirk mentioned different tools, different personalities use different things to achieve the movement from one mindset to another, from one belief to another. And those things are there to assist you, whatever they're doing, based on that personality, that background of that individual. So, again, all of you that are listening to this conversation, we're going to provide all of those things to the best of our ability so that you can get access, because our goal here at Threads is to assist you to get to know who you are and how great you are, and to make you aware that you are not alone. And so, as one of the questions I wanted to ask, Eric, as you are looking in today's world and you're seeing all the changes and the upswing of all kinds of emotional things, I think since the onset of COVID, the world emotionally has escalated um, by volumes, man. How what do you see, or what do you sense that your organization would like to begin to also address, if there's anything like that, or if what is it you sense within yourself as an individual now at the place you are right here in your life?
So you're asking if, like, what I sense, like kind of the escalating times and things going
Yeah.
on, like
Hmm.
how
And
we,
how do you think you guys can assist with those type of needs coming up?
yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think with everything that's going on, around the world, here domestically, I think a lot of people are just struggling with anxiety and like uncertainty, um, which can lead to unhealthy behaviors, right? We
Yeah.
talked about in the beginning, Ken, it's like we find this, whatever it is for us to help us kind of cope and deal with things. Um, I see I see a lot of people starting to cut through that noise and realize, like, hey, you know, maybe I should disconnect from social media for a while. Maybe I should
Yeah.
not watch the news all the time. And I think it's a lot of people are realizing the importance of mental health,
Hmm.
physical health, and just wellness in general. And you see kind of a shift of, I think you see a lot of people awfulizing and, getting caught up in everything that's going on. And then you see a lot of people that are like, hey, I can choose, like, I am in control of these other parts, and I'm going to
Yeah.
focus on those things. That other stuff, like, I can't change. I mean, I can do
Yeah.
my part within my community and get involved, and I can vote, or, no matter who you vote for, just be involved in like our systems.
Yeah.
Um, but, a lot of people are starting to realize that mental health, physical health, taking care of ourselves, being there for our kids and raising them, you know, with the values like that are important to us. And with that being said, I think there's kind of less stigma around mental health and taking
Yeah.
care of ourselves, and more people are starting to reach out. And I think for people that maybe feel that, hey, I'm not ready to meet with a clinician, or maybe I'm just struggling a little bit and just want someone to talk to that's trained and certified to provide kind of this mutual support, uh, that's where peer support can be super helpful. And I think we can't, kind of going back to what we talked about earlier, we can only control what we can control. And that's kind of our health and wellness and how
Yeah.
we treat other people. And that is our responsibility to do it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of resources out there, and a lot of people that want to help. And so you just got to reach out.
That's excellent. Man, Kirk, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. I enjoyed this conversation. And again, guys, we'll provide everything for you to reach Kirk and his team, and make sure that you guys step out and just ask questions. If you just need some guidance, ask them, and they'll be able to help you out as to what you need to do and make those changes required to change your life. As Kirk had said earlier, is that take ownership. That's the key. That's the first step. And again, man, I want to thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thanks, Ken. This was great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome, man.